I'm a little skeptical that the entry-level jobs apocalypse is even going to happen. A job is not like an easy thing to just take out. We live at a very confusing moment, I think, in technological and economic history. My friends Kim and Steve Yegge call that the potential closet of Eldritch horrors. I do not envy the talent wars Meta and OpenAI and Anthropic have to fight in. They are fighting the exponential, ironically, even if they're participating in it, because they have to develop so much quicker to beat their competition. I tend to make everyone a little bit upset when I talk about artificial intelligence.
Joining us on the show today is Daniel Rock, professor of operations, information, and decisions at the Wharton School of UPenn. But Daniel is not just in academics. He's a visionary economist whose research focuses on the economic effects of digital technologies, with a profound emphasis on artificial intelligence. He's also the co-founder and CTO of Workhelix, a startup focused on measuring and managing workhorse value through the lens of AI. Daniel's insights are crucial for understanding how AI impacts the future of work and talent, including his studies on which occupations are most exposed and the impact of AI on various professions. I brought Daniel on the show to help us understand how to think strategically about investing in AI capabilities, building adaptable teams, and navigating the long-term journey of AI adoption. Daniel Rock, welcome to the First 10 podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Boris, and I really appreciate the very kind introduction. I'll try to live up to that.
Of course. How do we do with that in terms of accuracy?
I mean, probably, yeah. That's the stuff I work on. We'll see if my visions end up being correct, or if it's a good excuse to go to the doctor. We'll see.
We never know. I know it's such a unique moment in time, especially as it relates to what the future holds with AI. So the good thing about this is it'll be kind of cemented into the digiverse, so to say, and we'll be able to look back on it.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's really exciting to get to talk with you about this, and looking forward to engaging with your audience.
Question: What's something about you that most people don't know?
That's a great question, and most people don't know that I want to tell everyone. Let's see. Here's something that I think people are learning about me, in terms of the work that I've done, but perhaps it hasn't been explicit. I tend to make everyone a little bit upset when I talk about artificial intelligence. There's a lot of friends I have on the sort of CS side of things, or the AI development side of things, who are like, oh man, the progress is exponential. We're moving at breakneck speed, and society is just not ready for what we're producing. And, from an economic perspective. And to those folks, I'm a little upsetting, because I say, well, the history of technological innovation like this, where things can change so much, tends to be a little bit slower than y'all are accounting for right now. I think it's potentially multiple decades till we see the full fruits of these LLM and AI related, this wave of AI is to do with generative AI and agents. But there's been a few different definitions of AI even over the last 10 years since I've been studying it anyway. But yeah, so I think it takes a while for these sorts of effects to propagate through. So it's a little bit upsetting to them. But then to like my economist colleagues, they might say, well, is this really all that different from what we thought of as machine learning or even linear regression? And to them, I say, no, this is an absolutely huge deal, and we should get ready. To help inform on what's happening and to research that properly. So, the company sits in the middle there.
It's a fascinating dichotomy. Yeah, and you're right. You do sit kind of at the epicenter of those two things. I was having a conversation with someone at lunch the other day where on the one hand, they said AI's hype and is overhyped and it'll probably die down. They're trying to compare it to NFTs. And then on the other hand, they talked about how it's going to eliminate entire professions. And I asked them, how could you think of both things at the same time?
Right. Yeah. Well, you can, in this case, I think, walk and chew bubblegum. There are places where AI is way overhyped, and there are places where I think it's underappreciated at the same time. So we live at a very confusing moment, I think, in technological and economic history. I guess part of my job is to be a historian of the very recent past and try to understand that. And then on the company side, what we're trying to do is is help people deploy this stuff fruitfully and not have to wait decades for those returns to show up.
Fascinating. Yeah, certainly a fascinating time to be alive. So you earned your degree in economics, and then you went on to earn a master's and then a PhD in managerial science. Now you're a professor in operations, information, and decisions. So
yeah,
what is managerial science for our audience? What does it mean to teach operations, information, and decisions? And what's it like being a professor right now?
Sure. So management science, I think, has a variety of definitions. If you ask people with this background what it means, you might get different answers from everybody. But my program, effectively what it means, I didn't get my PhD in the economics department, though I took many classes in the economics department. I would self-identify as an economist. But the degree that I got comes from the business school. So I did a PhD in the business school. The management science subgroup included marketing, something called system dynamics, operations management, and then the program that I was in called information technologies, which was fundamentally an interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary approach to teaching people to do research. So we had to pass, qualifying exams in sociology, in computer science, and economics, no matter which of those three tracks we decided was going to be our main focus. So I, got to interact a lot with people who do very, very different things than what I do. Technology is the sort of thing where it's sort of like that proverbial elephant where everybody's, looking at a different part of the elephant. I always butcher these analogies. But yeah, my approach is fundamentally an economics one. And I sort of spin through the different disciplines of economics, whichever seems most valuable for the question that I'm trying to answer.
Fascinating.
And then, I came back. So my undergraduate advisors, the people who got me into all of this stuff in the first place, one of them was my PhD advisor and now co-founder's first student. So he recommended for grad school I go study with Eric Brynjolfsson. Eric, is our joint advisor, and then I came back to the department that I started it all out in. What is it like teaching in the department? I think. I teach two different groups of people. I teach undergraduates a kind of optimization and simulation, in Excel, course. It's very much like practical value. It's something you use in your early career as a knowledge worker in a business environment, and it's high value there. They have different concerns than my MBAs, where I teach digital economics and strategy. That one I have to stay very current on like what's changing and try to make it relevant to the students. So I get this nice sort of mixture of things that are more stable and high value and in the short run, and then things that will like change potentially how people think about stuff on the MBA side. And then of course I work with PhD students, but they're more colleagues in research, right? Like I think of them as peers that where I'm trying to learn something from them as much as they're trying to learn something from me. So teaching is a wonderful experience, is an enormous privilege, and sort of perk of the gig of being a researcher at a research university.
Yeah, I bet. Good opportunity. Yeah, good opportunity to give back. Good opportunity to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of where the teachings are and its impact and everything.
Yeah.
How are students interacting and embracing AI, and how does that impact teaching, learning?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different modes. Just as there are, it's interesting for workers. You see a similar pattern, but there are plenty of students in certain classes. I'll say this is the bad mode, who will outsource their thinking to AI. And they don't learn because it's just really cheap and easy to dump some of these assignments if they're poorly designed. I think a lot of this is actually on the teacher, but they'll outsource their work to AI. I don't have many of those students. The structure of my class does not lend itself to that kind of behavior. There's another kind of student that aggressively uses AI to accelerate their learning, and they use it as a thinking tool. Those students, I think, are maybe a third of my classes, and you see them start to really flourish with these tools. You can see like amazing outputs that they create and expect of themselves on an ongoing basis. Like, oh man, I can really do more in the amount of time that I have. Then there's kind of like a rest of the community. They're sort of testing AI, using it for some very basic things, but not really making it part of their learning process, and not really, offloading a lot of thinking to it either. That's still, I think, the majority of folks. With some exceptions where you get sort of the bad mode that they tell me about in their other classes. So maybe I'm just being naive to think that they're not actually doing it for my class, but I don't see how you can really use some of these models for some of the assignments that I have. It's just not quite there yet.
Is it at a state where you as a professor or the school openly talks about and encourages using AI? Is it not talked about? Is it assumed? But there's or have you all set up like a statement of how to engage with AI for academics?
Yeah, I think the school is Wharton's been out ahead of this for quite a while, and I think one really nice thing is that they let the faculty determine their AI policy, but they encourage us to put that in our syllabus and to explain how we expect the students to behave, and how we expect them to learn. There's at Penn enterprise-wide GPT licenses, so people are using ChatGPT, and we, at least in my classes, right? Like I set up incentives designed to get people to work with GPT. So what I told my MBAs, for example, I still do writing assignments. People are like, "That's a little crazy. Why are you doing that?" I told them, "Well, you don't get an A if you're correct anymore. You have to be correct and original. You'll get a B if you're correct." And then the students, of course, ask, "What does original mean?" And I say, "Well, it's different than whatever GPT is saying. That's what original means." So
Right.
now they're in this mode where they have to figure out, like, how do I make this output mine and demonstrate that I've really thought carefully about what was being asked. And of course, I always get a student ask, "Well, what if I use AI tools and produce something that you judge as original?" And I say, "Wonderful, that's great news. Then you've learned how to use this tool." And that's what we're about, is trying to help people learn and bring technology into their life, into their lives in fruitful ways. So
Right.
yeah.
So I mean, sounds like a pretty progressive kind of position to take, and it sounds like your students are empowered to use AI, and you've
Absolutely.
adapted your learning and grading kind of criteria to align with that. So so goes the world. Sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still think of what I'm doing right now as a Band-Aid. My next step is to reconfigure the classroom experience to be more AI forward, and like in terms of what we do. And that might take I did one session this year, which I called Build Something Day, where I wanted the students to come write up spec docs, use Lovable or Bolt or Replit to make something, to build a front end for something. And I think the core premise of that class was you should have an eye-opening experience about what you're capable of doing now. And many of them had that, and then a bunch of them had another eye-opening experience, is that these things don't always perform well, and they had to learn how to sort of go back and forth with the prompts that they were sending in to develop something that worked better. So that's the sort of thing I think I would like the whole class to sort of resemble that experience, as a progressive series of like learning more about what AI tools do. I'm not there yet. I've just sort of nibbled around the edges with the incentives that I've changed.
Interesting. I'm sure AI could help with kind of flesh some of that out.
For sure.
But that sounds progressive and aligned with what I can imagine. These students, when graduating, will want to have the skills to be able to do for the workforce, because there's a lot of worry about the entry level jobs, whether at bachelor's or even probably MBA, being the first ones eliminated, and then how these entry level graduates could be competitive and add immediate value. I think in addition to whatever their entry level abilities are, the ability to bring in an AI native expertise to the company that they join could be hugely value add.
100%. And I candidly, I'm a little skeptical that the entry level jobs apocalypse is even going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell stories that go the other way. Like maybe these models contain a certain amount of expertise that make junior employees a much better deal. Um, you know, it could go either way right now. I have seen examples, like real examples of senior employees being more valuable because the boilerplate junior work that you would do to like train to become a senior person, that's just like offloadable in some cases. So um, it can go well, it can go really poorly. Uh, it's going to probably go well and poorly in certain parts. So again, we got to walk and chew gum. Uh,
Yeah.
and certainly, I would expect that my students, at least in my MBA class, doing this kind of uh, active learning work, I don't want them to be in a position where they can't add value in a new environment. That said, I'm not doing a ton. I'm one class amongst many. My colleagues are wonderful. They have great classes, and they challenge our students to think really carefully about a wide variety of things that I think our educational value is pretty high as like a teaching team. And then the students themselves are absolutely wonderful. They're energetic, entrepreneurial, brilliant, kind, and empathetic people. As a group, they're very impressive. So I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, yeah. You have to assume that. Um, well, so I'd love to get into AI and the enterprise and Workhelix. Maybe before we jump into Workhelix, I'd love to hear
Sure.
your observations of the enterprise. What you kind of saw there or tend to see there, and that next follow up is like what that then compelled Workhelix.
Sure. Well, so the history for sufficiently transformative technologies, and there's a spectrum here. You can go. There's a few technologies that have been recently like enormously valuable and required a certain degree of extensive transformation. I'm thinking of like cloud computing or databases. Those are a big deal, but I'm not sure. You could debate whether or not those are what economists would call general purpose technology. General purpose technology is something that is pervasive, affects most or all sectors of the economy, improves over time, and necessitates and spawns complementary innovation. Um, that is, you got to build systems around it to actually get the juice from the tool. Um, so there's a lot of technologies like that to varying degrees. The personal computer and the internet are the most obvious in the recent past. Every single one of those requires a ton of time and a ton of effort, a lot of investment, and not just investment in the obvious things like I got to buy computers, but now I got to train people, I got to show them how it's valuable for work. I have to design the process that makes it valuable at work. I have to hire new modules of folks and get them working together to produce good things. I mean, think of like, what does software engineering look like if you don't have GitHub or GitLab? Like version control systems needed to be invented. All of this, right? Agile versus waterfall development, different versions of the software development lifecycle, and now people building their own new things. It's just radically needy as a whole integration process. So we found at Workhelix, looking at AI, seeing the potential for this needy, like investment intensive future that was coming, and we thought, well, it would be a little bit terrible if it took 3 decades for this to show up. We should help companies to access these tools, change their processes, learn how things are going using the last wave of technology. We're very lucky. We've got things like APIs and databases to help do this. Let's deploy an economics, machine learning, data science toolkit to help people steer the ship better and get better outcomes out of these technologies sooner. That's kind of our thesis, is that this will work and that the combination of services and software will make it so that we can help our customers flourish.
I love that. And what is the world inside of an enterprise look like before Workhelix, and what does it look like when someone uses Workhelix? Like paint me a picture of that.
Sure. So I want to give credit to the leaders that we work with. I think a lot of them have a very clear vision of how well this can go. I think there's a number of them who can see a clear vision, but then they also operate inside of constrained environments, and they say, well, there's certain risks that I'm just not capable of taking right now because the organization won't get behind me on that. So with each different group, we start from a different place, candidly. But before, they might not have visibility into what do people do in each different role throughout the organization. They might not have visibility into to what extent can AI help in those tasks. Not necessarily replace people, but like change a workflow, make things better, make things more satisfying for a worker, produce new products, these sorts of things. Like where is a good area to start? And then once you choose a strategy and you say, here are the things we're going to target first, here are the things we'll do second, here's where we want to try experimentation, here's where we know there's an existing solution that works well, which we can help with. The next step is like, okay, let's measure against those goals. Let's see where people are deploying AI from the digital exhaust that's coming through the various systems in the company. An example of that might be we can connect and look at the conversations that someone is having with their internal LLM system. And of course, we try to redact and remove PII or any of the privacy stuff. But we can say, oh, okay, well, we said that processing invoices would be a potentially valuable place to deploy AI, and you have 1,500 salespeople and SDRs who are doing this task. Let's build a system, because we see people using like your internal GPT to do it. Let's build a system so that you have more observability into that. And it doesn't have to be, that's more of a point solution. But then maybe, like a friend of mine's company has done, you build an LLM-based sales coaching system, which says on this sales call with these types of customers, if you mention the following items, it tends to increase the conversion rates by 30%. These are the sorts of connections we want our customers to make. And then, so we go from the overall big picture treasure map, like what do people do and where's their opportunity, down to across their internal systems, where do we see people deploying AI the most versus the least? What kinds of things are they doing? And then underneath that, we might even say, hey, here's a KPI in like, I don't know, software engineering. How many PRs are getting merged to main on, a regular basis with the help of AI versus not? And if we can detect, say, a 25% lift in that PR process without a gain in the bug rate, like that's a sort of free lunch to deploy relatively cheap software. Of course, we'll try to keep pushing there, answering questions that our partners have. The more we hear a variety of partners asking for something, the more we convert it to software and then move on to the next thing.
Fascinating. So it sounds like on the but for Workhelix side, companies are using AI, companies are adopting AI. Workhelix is helping them figure out maybe where they're going to get heightened value sooner, or heightened value, based on how the team might be already using AI, where to kind of focus next energies, things of that nature.
Yeah, if you're very early, we can help try to figure out where to start deploying it. And if you're sort of later in the game and you've got engagement across a variety of different tools, let's help figure out what those tools are producing for you.
And so it sounds like, I mean, if you had to share your perspective on, there's a lot of chatter out there about AI replacing jobs, but it sounds like what you're talking about is a little more down the line of maybe job redesign or job augmentation, or maybe even arming individuals to be able to do their jobs better. Which of the two are you more seeing, and do you anticipate continuing to happen?
Right. So I think there's this great debate, right? Are we augmenting? Are we automating? And I would say it's very hard to tell at this point in time. I haven't seen too many companies credibly say, because of AI, we have automated away this job. Because remember, a job is a bundle of tasks, and skills and capabilities and and knowledge. A job is not like an easy thing to just take out. And I think that's kind of, people like to hop to the item of the job or the unit of observation of the job, and because that's how we transact in the labor market, right? We share the gains of economic activity primarily via our work and our labor. But and we're hired to do a few tasks. But then you have to think, like, why are those tasks together in a bundle in the first place? So that's that's one thing to keep in your head as you think about it. The other is that all of the different jobs that we do are configured in systems that process for companies inputs to outputs, and sometimes those inputs are physical, like if you're refining oil or something and you're combining it with know-how and capital equipment, and eventually you create gasoline or heating oil or something. um, or it could be knowledge inputs. So, like an insurance company might take, customer risk information and offer contracts, and then insure risks. Sending people money when things go poorly according to the policy. So, thinking about those systems and how those systems change in the presence of a new technology. Yeah, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. We don't know who those people are yet. Um, there's a sense in which we can start thinking about the policies that we need to, in general, protect folks who would be worse off as a result of the tools. And, there are folks like Brian Kovac at Carnegie Mellon who thought about programs like wage insurance. But in my level, where I go talk to people about automation versus augmentation, it's a managerial decision with an employee. And those people don't care. If I automate part of your job that you hate doing and give you more time to do things that you love doing, you are thrilled. If I automate away your entire job, you're obviously upset about that, but you may find something else to do. I don't know. If I augment your work, you may be happy because now I want to hire, 20 more of you and you get paid more. Likewise, if I augment one person to do a job and my demand is inelastic, that is, making someone more productive, dropping the costs of one person to do more work. If that's not meant with a commensurate increase in how much people want that additional work, you can get shrinking employment in a certain category relative to other categories. So if that happens for augmentation, I do the work of 10 people and we only ever needed 10 people and we only ever will. That's bad news for employment too. The short answer here is economists don't know. Like, we don't know if wages are going up or down, if employment is going up or down. Those are retrospective questions. There's all sorts of changes happening in the economy. And the critical idea is to, I think, find work that you can do, not a job necessarily, but work that you can do where your organization has a lot more demand for it than it can currently fill out. Those are the places where I think, we're just going to be barreling resources into as these LLMs and AI tools get cheaper.
Fascinating. Okay, so are there jobs that you see more prone to AI impact versus jobs that are more prone to AI augmentation for enhanced productivity versus jobs that are less prone to AI impact?
So the stuff that's happening right now is where it's easy to keep doing what you were doing with the assistance of AI tools. I don't think we've gotten to like transformative changes in how work is structured yet, though I would imagine those are going to start relatively soon. So some of those areas include like software engineering and data science. You can do what you were doing much, much better with these tools. It does require a little bit of a mindset shift where many of us are becoming reviewers more than doers in certain areas. I've used, in my own data science and economics work, I think these things are wonderful for writing code. They still make some mistakes that I'm like, I made that mistake when I first started out too. And it's time for me to, to alter that. They also do things creatively. So software engineering is an interesting one because it's not, folks are said, okay, well, we don't need as many more devs. I'm not sure that's the case, but I do think that everybody, like developing software, if English is the programming language we're going to be using, many more people might enter that field in some way, shape, or form. So my friends Gene Kim and Steve Yegge call that the potential closet of Eldritch horrors, where everybody's developing stuff, but they haven't learned the good practices and security concerns and sort of stability minded practices that make software work well. So you could open up your entire organization's attack surfaces by orders of magnitude if everybody's all of a sudden a developer. And this is where that veteran developer becomes really valuable as someone who can make sure that the rest of us aren't hurting ourselves and each other with it. An area where I'm perhaps a little bit more concerned, whether it's augmentation or automation that happens, is customer service. Customer service is the sort of place where, like, in a limited time frame, so let's say like within a week, you are only going to get so many calls complaining about your service, unless you're an airline, which you probably have just about infinite demand for that. So if we make people really productive and they can handle tons and tons of cases, then it might be the situation that there are fewer customer service agents employed. Now, the longer term and the longer term things are elastic. I might use human customer service or even machine customer service to reach out to the customer more. I might be much more proactive and try to interact with my customers a lot more with the help of these tools. So it's not clear that those jobs go away, but I think in the short run, if we keep things the way they are, then some of the folks in that role right now might be at risk. But yeah, that's those are two examples. I can think of many more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm on your team with regards to software engineers for sure. People ask me, are you seeing jobs being impacted, and software engineering, probably going to go first. And on the one hand, I've now heard engineers multiple times say to me, I'm coding while I still can, because at some point this is going to become a relic. And they're saying, like, I don't know how many more years I have to do this. So I'm hearing that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, I work pretty exclusively with AI startups, and y'all can't hire fast enough. And so I'm like, if AI startups are still hiring engineers and they can't hire fast enough, I think we're going to be okay. When they stop hiring, right? I mean, we still have the whole entire world of software engineering to be impacted. But y'all are kind of like the tip of the spear as it relates to innovation, and you guys can't get these people fast enough. I can say that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm keeping an eye on our token budget too, and watching it grow. I don't see any slowdown in our need for people who can do things that are amazing with AI tools anytime soon. So,
Agreed.
Shout out to our engineers at Workhelix who are doing a great job there.
Yeah. Speaking of Workhelix, I'd love to spend a little bit of time on that. So, you're what, 3 years, 4 years into running the company? What made you decide to start a startup? What's it like being a founder? Tell me if you're thinking there, and then day to day.
Yeah, so I think my founder experience, and I think my co-founders would probably agree, is fairly typical so far in many ways. It's one of the hardest things I've ever worked on, because ultimately, right, you're trying to delight customers with something that doesn't exist yet. And you have to figure out what that is, and what earned insights you have that can build towards satisfying that customer pain point. So why did we start it? Well, I think this moment is not going to come along very often, where you have a really transformative new technology. I think our earned insight is that we have been working on the economics of these transformative technologies for quite a while, and we have a sense of where the hard things in general might be. Of course, converting that to software and or services is very challenging, but in the sense that we thought this would be important, and we knew which data sets were going to be important, and we knew which models we could run against some of these things. And we also, we're working with business folks who know how to manage these kinds of engagements. This mixture of things you don't see very often, and it's sort of rare enough and exciting enough for us to say, okay, we need to do this, because otherwise, there's a chance that if we don't make at least a little bit of a dent, it takes a little bit longer than we'd hope to get the benefits of these tools into the enterprise. So we're doing it because we think we have a way to be helpful, and we think that moment is sort of a fleeting moment where if we don't strike now, then the helpfulness of what we're doing is going to be perhaps lost. So that was kind of the motivation to start it. The experience of it, I think there's just so much to learn. You're on a steep learning curve all the time, and if you don't stay on it, you know that something's wrong, and you're like upset by it. So it's like we're always reconfiguring stuff to make sure that we're learning quickly. And that's learning what doesn't work as much as what does work. There's been a few things that we tried out that should have worked in theory, maybe, depending on who you ask. And then when we actually went to see for whom this is this actually something that's really helpful or that adds value, then you can't really answer that question. So I think there's a lot of value in the jobs to be done framework, for example, like whose job are you helping someone to do? Um, what makes their life easier as a result of your efforts? And I think in some cases we didn't really execute on that. But in others we did, and we opened folks eyes to something that's new and possible, and we use AI to do it all over the place. So that's been fun too. A lot of as a CTO, one of my core learnings over the last year or two is that AI will pay off your credit card debt on the technical debt side. So if you start racking up a lot of technical debt, that can be okay because AI will wipe it out to some extent a little later on.
I love that. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. That makes a lot of sense. I was just thinking as you were talking. So when you started Workhelix, that was before the ChatGPT moment, right? So the world
Yeah.
wasn't kind of going crazy about it. And then today, uh, you know, it's it's very hard. It takes a whole effort to keep up with all the latest that's going on with AI, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
what's it like building today than in 2021? And how do you keep up with the latest? Are you all reactive to it, or are you kind of staying with the vision agnostic of all the kind of daily releases that are coming out?
Right. So I think many startups, I'll frame it as a cranky thing, take a typical economics approach here. Um, I think many startups make the mistake of fighting the technological exponential trend. I do not envy the talent wars. Not that I could pay 100 million plus for an engineer, but like I do not envy the talent wars that Meta and OpenAI and Anthropic have to fight in. They are fighting the exponential, ironically, even if they're participating in it, because they have to develop so much quicker to beat their competition. We can sit back off of that and build modularly. So, like, I want to get exposure to that. I want every time there's a new model from one of these companies that or organizations that does a great job, I want to be able to drop that into our infrastructure and have our technology be better as a result. So,
Right.
you know, to some extent, that lets us be reactive if we have to be. Nevertheless, I spend an hour plus a day trying to understand where AI is. I was doing that before. I sometimes that's, hey, here, check out this really cool new way to configure multiple LLMs in the same command line or the same interface. In some cases, that's digging through some like paper that's sort of about differential geometry and how these models work underneath the hood. It's a combination of different efforts, and I've curated my Twitter and to some extent Blue Sky feeds to serve a lot of that information to me. But I also I stay in touch with colleagues and friends who are also building in this area. A lot of group chats. My colleague Ethan Malik and Lilach Malik, they're always testing the models and doing a way better job than almost any other human being on Earth. So, whatever they have to say, I'm there to listen. So we're all kind of trying to figure this out, and the important thing is to be part of the community.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then some of the group chats and discords and X and other social networks are great ways to foster that.
For sure, it's a good place to get exposed to things that you don't believe too. There's plenty of folks in these group chats and other places where I'm like, that seems nuts, and a non-trivial amount of the time they end up being correct. So it's you're like, wow, okay, that nutty thing
Yeah,
ends up being the right view of the world. Cool, I'm here to learn.
great. Yeah, exactly. And we're still at that early point where the future is unknown. I had a guest on who had a prediction around winter is coming, was their kind of view, which we'll see how that goes. But I'll ask you, what's your prediction for where AI goes and how fast it gets there, and open ended in terms of how you want to approach that.
Right. So and let's set some parameters on this for what could happen. Either let's say we have at least one order of magnitude in terms of loss improvement in these models priced in. So let's say like within 3 years we get two orders of magnitude improvement. I'm going to say that's probably going to happen. Like I think people will figure that out. The combination of algorithmic improvements, better use of compute, more interesting use of data. A lot of this is sort of ad hoc right now in terms of how some of these things get built, as I understand it. And I think if you were to be scientific about that stuff, or more scientific about that stuff, it would probably get optimized a little bit better. So I'm going to say we're going to get much better models that can do some pretty astonishing things, but maybe don't radically transform everything, as some of the CS folks would have you believe. I'm going to say that's my base case. I think we're going to get much better models, and this is a new type of software, somewhere between fuzzy cron jobs for agents and continuous databases, where we can have conversations, do knowledge work better. So okay, base case.
Table stakes. That's table stakes.
I think half the time that's what we probably get. And it's like a slow roll for the rest of it, or slow burn. More algorithms get invented. I think the AI community is still working on it. So let's call that the Jan LeCun case. Trillions of dollars of value, but the AI community is not getting as excited as they would be about the machine god. I do not think, and I could be wrong about this, I've been wrong about many things, but I don't think the machine god's coming anytime soon. I don't think it comes from LLMs. I think that is artificial super intelligence, in the sense that we have a self-motivated AI system that can do everything better than us, and is treating us like pets or something, the stuff that a lot of the alignment community might be worried about longer term. I'm not worried about those things as is. What I am worried about are individuals who are really powerful with these models. This technology scales people who we don't like, people who wish ill for most of the world's bioterrorists and that kind of stuff, or bad actors. I think the long-term trend of technology is to scale what one person can do, and that becomes much riskier in the future before we get the artificial superintelligence that's a little bit scary. So right. I think that's the thing that I'm most worried about, and I think that's coming more and more, where everybody becomes their own developer, and you can build software for all sorts of really interesting things just using natural language. That's so yeah, I think that stuff gets really good. Now, do I think we're going to see enormous unemployment? Probably not anytime soon. What are the changes that could lead to more of these supreme powerful machines? It'd be things like new algorithms, evolutionary algorithms, for example, helping to solve general self-improving goal design. But yeah, so that's where I think better models than we currently have now, reinforcement learning based, test time compute based, aggressive acceleration of these existing agentic kind of systems, better software systems, redesign of organizations as we have them right now. That's kind of what I think the most likely case is. And then there's this little tail of something new gets invented, and at that point I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of research to understand that thing instead.
Sounds like, and I think I'm on team Daniel in this case. Sounds like pretty natural evolution of said technology, much like we've had very natural evolution of a range of technologies before us, and we'll have new technologies after us.
Yeah, is this something? So you talk with a lot of these folks who either research this or build with it. What's your sense of what people in your world are thinking about? Do you have people who are just this isn't happening, it's just software? Do you have folks who are really terrified the machine god is imminent? What's the signal you're getting?
What I mainly hear from people is their own natural psyche kind of playing out with AI as the backdrop. So if they're overly kind of concerned about problems in the world and things going bad and things getting unruly, then AI could be a mean. Those people tend to think that AI might be a means by which that will happen either faster or more of or whatever. Yeah. And then there are others that, like I spoke with someone who he's career developer, worked in a handful of different software development eras, and he's like, look, AI right now is like a junior intern. They're reasonably productive, and I could get some good gains from that. But we have and maybe one day it'll be an experienced intern, and maybe one day it'll be a junior developer, and then slowly it'll kind of maybe work its way up the curve. But as AI evolves, so do I, as one who is able to leverage that AI, and so we'll all kind of evolve together. So I hear that, and then in my next conversation, I'll hear people who are just appreciating the quote unquote good old days of getting to hand code things themselves, before AI completely makes them obsolete. So I'll hear both of those in a day, actually, and it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. That seems like a high bandwidth, information flow.
It's pretty good. It keeps me entertained and well balanced. I stay pretty neutral through all this through all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to hear. So on Workhelix, you're having fun building it. You're growing your team. What does your team look like right now? Who are you adding to your team? Who would you like to hear from? Should they be listening to this?
Sure. Yeah. So we are adding all sorts of different types. We are looking for folks in product. We're looking for account executives, a marketing manager, what we call a forward deployed engineer. So we, I guess this is a new buzzword in Silicon Valley now also. So that's great. Like the job title is getting solidified a little bit more. But the idea is that, we have these engineers working hand in hand with our customers to solve their problems. And then we can use what they build to kind of fit the rest of our solutions and tools and capabilities into their context. So it's very much a technical role, but it's one where you get to work a lot with people who will tell you to your face what their problems are and, ask you to help solve it. We are also looking for a tech lead right now, someone to work with me to help make our software engineering efforts really sing. And we're building all sorts of, some things are internal tools, some things are customer facing. It really depends. We have APIs, dashboards, maybe a model context protocol in there somewhere. A lot of really interesting challenges. And then, just generally, if there's something where you think you're the kind of person to help out with an AI-driven engagement to help a company figure out how to make AI valuable, across lots of different applications, we want to hear from you. Maybe you're the right person for us, and hopefully we're the right person for you. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know firsthand from working with you, Daniel, and the team. I don't think you could have timed Workhelix better than you did, and you have a pretty darn incredible group of co-founders and leaders who are running with you. I know kind of who's who on the investor side, so it feels like a very good time and a very early time in the kind of evolution of the enterprise and the evolution of AI. To be part of the crew, and lots of greenfield left to build.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying to build a culture of making our customers as happy as possible, while also a culture that really values learning and individual experience on the team. Folks are friendly, they care about each other, and they want to make sure that we get this right.
Love that. Well, Daniel, thank you again for joining us. Had a great time chatting it up.
My pleasure. Yeah.
And now, this will be memorialized. So, we'll be able to look back on it a few years from now. We'll see, if AI did end up eating the world, or if it, just kind of helped, mankind evolve just that little bit, to kind of do better in their own respective way. So thank you again, Daniel, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Boris. Appreciate it, man.